Ready to go, Chuck?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right, guys. Welcome to episode 1 of the Chondro Lounge. And we are opening up with an amazing first guest. But before we do that, my name is Lucas, and I am joined by Chuck. We are your co-hosts for the Chondro Lounge. And tonight we're going to have someone who is a Texas-born and bred chondro keeper. He's been keeping for over a decade. Mark Heger lives just outside of Dallas with his wife and son. And when it comes to chondros, his two main projects are the Calico line and Extraordinary Adults from Yellow NEOS. He has created and he has ran the txchondros Instagram page where he loves to broadcast and showcase not only his animals, but everyone else's. And I've gotten to know Mark quite a bit over the last year and a half, meeting him at Bill's place. And, you know, we just got done meeting at Bill's, and it was nice catching up with him. But before we jump in, Chuck, you have anything that you want to mention about Mark?
He's a great guy, man. I love having him as a friend, and he's helped me out a lot with keeping and breeding, especially with feeding trials and stuff. We'll touch on that once we get to the breeding and the feeding and neonates and stuff, and a technique that he taught me. It really got a couple of my neos started.
Awesome. Yeah, man. I've been talking to Mark for a bit, and, you know, I feel bad. I've always, you know, inquired about some of his animals, and I know that I want to work with Calico, you know, designer stuff, because I'm being very picky about my designer stuff. And, you know, I would inquire knowing that, like, it was one of the last couple from his clutches and, like, always hesitant to pull the trigger. But Mark, sorry if I'm being a tire kicker, but I promise one of these days I'm going to get a hidden gem from one of your clutches. So why don't we go ahead and bring Mark on? Whether you've poured your heart and soul into your reptile business or you've just begun your business journey, AE Foundry has you covered with next level expertise in graphic design, motion graphics, videography, photography, and so much more. If you've been dying for a new logo for your reptile business, motion graphics for your current logo, a new website, or need assistance making your video podcast come to life, then listen carefully. AE Foundry's mission places storytelling at its core. AE Foundry believes that a distinctive story and background are the driving forces that set your brand apart. In today's market, consumers seek more than just products. They crave a connection built on trust with the brands they cherish. AE Foundry is committed to empowering small businesses and fostering authenticity that resonates with their consumers. Reach out to them and let them help you craft a visual narrative that helps establish a genuine and lasting connection with your audience. To contact AE Foundry, email them at aromero@aefoundry.com or on Instagram at AE Foundry. Mark, what's going on?
Hey guys,
What's going on, brother?
yeah, thanks for having me here. You know, it's an honor to be the first guest for you guys, and man, I'm excited about talking chondros. So thanks for having me on. This is going to be a good time.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I mean, every single time that I've met you in person or we talk, I feel like there is no shortage of talking chondros that you can do. So, I mean, what a better guest than to kick us off, right?
Yeah. Hey, well, you know, it's not very often that we get to sit around and talk snakes in general with just like our normal everyday people. So whenever you do get the opportunity, you really got to capitalize on it and just soak it for all it's worth, you know?
Absolutely, man. So if you don't mind, kind of take us into your introduction to keeping, you know, reptiles in general and green tree pythons. You know, there's a great story that I think I've only heard once on something about you and Bill on how you got into chondros, but I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. So I've lived in Dallas, Texas, pretty much my whole life. I went and attended college down in Austin for a handful of years. But most of my upbringing and everything growing up as a kid, I was raised here in Dallas, Texas, and we had a forest behind our house. And so like when I was a kid, I was in the forest all the time, just looking at reptiles, catching snakes, catching frogs, doing whatever I can. So I've been super interested in reptiles and animals my entire life, and mostly just in like finding them, learning about them, like just kind of the fun facts of everything. And then I got into wakeboarding and traveling around the country doing wakeboarding, kind of like in junior high and high school, and that pretty much put a no on keeping anything myself, just because traveling was too much. My focus was not on anything else but the sport that I loved. But then after I got married, I wanted to keep a snake, and I had kept a handful of snakes before, but I knew like, man, I want to get back into this and take it seriously. So I got on the MP forums, the Morelia Python forums, back when it existed, and was just looking at carpet pythons. And so I got a like a jungle coastal cross that I just thought was super cool. And it's like so many of us have seen like that first striking example of a black and yellow jungle that was just like enamoring. So
They're beautiful.
They're incredibly beautiful. And so I got one, but in the back of my mind, I was already thinking, man, I can't wait to be advanced enough, or like get enough notches under my belt to be able to keep a green tree python. Because that, like, when I looked at that, I was like, oh, that's the pinnacle, but I got to start down lower. And so I started with the carpet python. It was a great snake. It was awesome. And then there was a dude who had kept green trees for a while here in the DFW area, and he was selling his collection of like 4 snakes, 4 green trees. So I listed my carpet python on Craigslist and got a response. I knew it was a female, and had lineage information on it. So I feel like I had a leg up on some other Craigslist sellers. But got a message on Craigslist from this guy named William, and said he was willing to buy my female, and if I could bring it out to him. So I was like, yeah, that's great. Let's agree on a price. Let's do it. So I go out to William's house, and it was Dr. William Stiegel, who we all know and love, Bill. And that was the first time that I had seen like a private collection of snakes that was immaculately kept, that was like this incredible group of carpet pythons and ball pythons, and like I was blown away by it. And so I go in there to sell Bill this carpet python, and we start talking about, why am I selling it? Hey, why do you have all these snakes? What do you do? And we just get to know each other a little bit. And we start talking about green trees and how like that's like what we're both into. And I said, yeah, I'm actually selling this one to you so that I can go buy, these other ones. And so Bill, he was like, oh man, I just got like my first 2. And so we just nerded out together and just like started our chondro journey at the exact same time. And it was so cool, because I had never kept like a collection of snakes like that.
Right.
But I had Bill to, kind of lean on and just talk to about it. And we were both getting into this new species that seemed so like advanced and just high level, but we were doing it together. So we got to really like just talk through it and hash it out and figure out what was going to work, what wasn't. And it was just such a cool experience. And I'm super thankful for just being able to grow up in the chondro hobby with Bill.
You know what's really cool is this idea that you ran into him and saw his collection that long ago, and we were just there this last weekend, and just I bet it's been crazy over the years to just see it, kind of progress and transpire the way that it has.
Oh yeah, I mean, so this was actually when I went to see him. He was in his old house, so he moved into the current house he's in maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so he was in a different house. He had a smaller room. He had, like everything was packed in there. He has way more carpet pythons. Like green trees were kind of the side project. And then to watch it evolve out of where he was and then into his new place is just awesome. And I count my blessings that I got to help him pack up his snakes and move them to the other house.
That's awesome.
And so Bill has been an incredible friend, an incredible mentor, and just like a comrade. Like we've been in this together, and so it's been so cool to grow with Bill as he's doing it, which is so cool.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. It's crazy to think that it seems like, I feel like I'm in that position where I have a bunch of other things and the chondros are the side project, but I feel like it's not going to be long until that flips the script pretty soon here.
Yeah, you get bit and you get addicted real quick.
Real hard, man.
The mayor and the chaplain built Chondro Town themselves from the ground up.
Right.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, the mayor has built a lot, and I have been there. So yeah, I don't know how much I've helped to build, but we've gotten to do just a lot of cool stuff together. Like I went on a mission to buy. There was this guy in Oklahoma that was selling like 6 of the sharp horn PVC cages, and I was like, Bill, I'm gonna go get 3 of these. Do you want the other 3? And he was like, yeah, I want them. And so I hauled it up to Oklahoma. I put them in my truck. I hauled it back, and it's like, dude, that's a cool little adventure that I got to go on, like with Bill. Like that's super cool. So
that's pretty sweet.
Little stuff like that where it's like, man, we've gotten to do a lot of cool stuff together, and our friendship has only grown over the years. So he's a great guy, and anyone who gets to go to his house is lucky. You guys would completely agree that his collection is just head and shoulders above most, if not all.
Yeah. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's extensive. It's it's a bit excessive, but it's necessary.
Yeah. Oh, if you think that's excessive, man, you got to come see my garage with the retics. I don't have like 2 inches of ceiling room left. But Mark, I'm curious. So you started getting into green tree pythons, and what is it that you're working with and specializing in, and what are you focusing on really?
Yeah. So my very first green tree python was this Craigslist find that I got. I was kind of under the idea that it's better to like drive a beater car for your first car. If you're gonna be a stupid 16-year-old and wreck a first car, it's better to drive a beater than it is a Ferrari. So I got a Craigslist green tree that the guy told me it was bred by somebody. He didn't know who it was. He was told it was a Maruki Biak, and it was eating for him and everything. So I got this yellow Neo, and completely unchanged. Like, it was just starting to get its colors coming in. And I eventually learned she was a female, and she just kept getting more black coming in, more like yellow and white. And she ended up being just the most phenomenal looking green tree. And so I was completely awestruck by her color change, from a yellow Neo to this like green and black and blue and yellow and white python that I got to keep. And so her name was Fiona, and she absolutely hooked me on green trees, but also on yellow Neos. So that's like my very first green tree was when the yellow Neo project started. And I was like, dude, I cannot wait to recreate this feeling of watching a yellow Neo grow into this like crazy colored adult. So I had done my research. I had stalked the Morelia viridis forums, the MVF, and learned all the lineages, learned all the vernacular. Like, I knew all the breeders, I knew all the history, and I fell in love with yellow Neos and the Calico line. And so Fiona was my first, and I said, man, she is going to be a staple. She is going to, like, every time I shared a picture of her, and I was like, man, look at this snake. And people would continually say, man, like, that's not normal. She really does look amazing. And so I knew I had something special with her. So she was one side of the projects that I knew I wanted to build upon. And then the second I saw the Calico line on the MVF, I was like, man, I love the history of it. I love the look that it gives, that like pixelation, and
Dude, they're hard to beat, man.
For the purists out there, I get it. Like, it's not the localities. It's not, like, I understand, but man,
we get it. They're mutts.
To look at this snake that looks so far from how nature intended it to, with like colors that you could just never imagine, and then to have the history and the lineage and just everything on top of it, it drew me in so hard. I fell head over heels for the Calico line. So those are kind of the two projects that I have really honed in on, and I have done my best to try and keep like laser focused on those two projects, the Calico line and yellow Neos with a lot of color. Those are kind of my two specialty areas, and I try and stay in my lanes.
So you've had 3 clutches now that you've had one recently that started to pip, and 2 others that are already off the perch and into their own tubs. What were those pairings?
Yeah. So this year, as it turns out, for whatever reason, I am usually one of the first chondro breeders in Texas to have eggs on the ground and then to have babies hatch. It's happened the past handful of years, and I predict it'll probably keep happening, and I'm not upset about it. But so this year I've had 3 clutches laid and hatch. And the first one was a Calico male that I had bred last year as well. So I bred him to a different female this year, a female that I produced back in 2019. And she is a Andrew Amon blue line female that I had an Andrew Amon blue line male that I bred to a Biak female, and I produced this female, Honey Bear. And so I raised up Honey Bear. She was a yellow Neo, and bred her to this calico male. And I did not know that this male was red dominant. I was actually hoping for some yellow Neos to pop out, and she laid 18 eggs. All of them went the distance, and in the end, 16 of the 18 hatched out and perched, and all 18, even the dead and egg ones, were all red. So I feel pretty confident that he is a red dominant male, and no matter what I breed him to, it's going to be all reds. So
you don't need him. You can send him my way.
That's devastating.
Yeah.
I have an open cage.
I know
I'm sorry.
Most people would consider that like
Jackpot lottery.
Yeah, it's the best, and I don't argue with that. I like red Neos, especially for the Calico project. I would prefer to keep mostly red Neos for that, but I do want to bring yellow Neos from Calico into some of the yellow Neo projects that I have going on. So I was hoping to get some yellow Neos, and when you just have your expectations aligned one way and they don't go that way, you're like, shoot, 16 red Calico Neos, dang it.
I feel for you. That's terrible.
It's a heartbreaker. So yeah, I have those. So that was one pairing, and that's really like from the Calico side of things, that's the pairing that I was most excited about this year. I knew I wanted to pair this female that I had raised up as a hatchling, and I produced her here, I raised her here. This is the first time that I've had a female produce that I produced, a female
Nice.
lay that I produced.
Nice.
So that's a really cool feeling, and to do it with this calico male is just awesome. The second clutch that I had was the male was a full sibling and clutch mate to the sickness, and the female is from a like completely different melanistic and blue line mix, and so to have like black and blue genetics on both sides, I was really excited to see what this pairing could produce, and likely, at least what I predict, would be some really crazy black and blue snakes. So the sickness sibling, his name is the Sniffles, because he is so far,
The Sniffles.
so far from the sickness look. He's a mostly green, if not all green animal. But yeah, so the Sniffles, who is siblings to the sickness, he was bred to this Brumley blue female that Jason Brumley of Brumley Reptiles, another Texas legend and breeder, he produced her from this melanistic line and signal herp line. So really thankful to have those hatchlings doing well. The blood from Heger, like it, I've seen a lot of hatchlings that Bill has produced over the years. I have seen almost all of them. I'll go out on the line to say I've seen almost all of the babies that Bill has produced over the last 10 years. And these ones that I made from that sickness sibling, they fall right in line with that. I mean, the Heger blood is so potent. It takes over. It hijacks everything, and it creates dark Neos,
Yellow diamonds.
bright yellow diamonds.
Yeah, they look great.
They are just electric, and so really cool. Unfortunately, it was a small clutch, and a couple of the eggs didn't go to the distance, so I only got I had 6 hatch out. 2 of them were deformed and just didn't last even a couple days. So I have 4 hatchlings that are perching and eating from that clutch, which is super exciting. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, those came out good. That's where number 18 came from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's drooling over 18, and I don't blame him. I mean, it is the darkest Neo with the brightest yellow diamonds. I mean, it's like someone plugged that thing into a light socket. It's unbelievable. It's really cool looking.
So this last one, the third one that's pipping out right now, what was that?
Yeah. So
you had yellow babies there.
Yeah.
Finally.
Amen. Yeah, praise the Lord. So yeah, two clutches of all red Neos, and me trying to be the yellow Neo guy hasn't produced a single yellow Neo yet. So Lucas, you were just up here for NARBC, so we were chatting it up and everything, and on Friday I looked in my incubator and the eggs hadn't pipped yet. They were still, they're dented in. I knew they were going to pip any day. I left to go out of town. I came back Sunday afternoon, evening, and had a head poking out. So
nice.
This was a yellow Neo to yellow Neo clutch. They're actually siblings, a brother and sister that I paired together. I produced here in 2019 from Fiona, that original yellow Neo that started it all for me. They were her children when I bred her to Jack, and Jack was from Rob Worrell. He was produced by Rob and just has some crazy yellow Neo lineage behind him. So these 2 that I raised up from 2019 are what I would consider like the creme de la creme of yellow Neos. So the male Muse is just phenomenal. I mean, he's got every color you could ask for. He's high black. He's got a good amount of yellow. He's got it all. He really is like, when I think of like the perfect yellow Neo adult, Muse is it. He's so handsome. Like that's what I'm shooting for. And I would normally, I'm not against doing sibling to sibling pairings. I think snakes can handle it. We've seen it over and over again that genetically they are capable of doing some of that first and maybe even second generation inbreeding for line breeding traits. But with Muse and his sister Crow, I just could not help myself and said, man, there's not a better pairing specifically for Crow that I could think of than her brother. And so by being able to concentrate those genetics and produce like the most just potent yellow Neos that I can, and then go out to outcross into some other lines, I'm really, really excited about it. So those babies they're in the incubator. They're actually mostly in their eggs still. I got 7 eggs there, and I think 4 or 5 of them are pipping right now. So they're not even perched yet. They're still just hanging out in their eggs. So that's the third and probably final clutch of 2024, and we're not even in May yet. So I'm ahead of the game in a lot of ways.
You're muted.
I had myself muted, man. Damn it. Rookie mistake. I'm excited, especially because you got some yellow neos. I'm hoping you decide to keep, one or two back and I get to watch them grow.
Yeah. So the plan with that clutch is I'm probably gonna keep most, if not all of them. I I think one of the things that the green tree community could do better is to pick a project and work it, like, pardon the language, but work it long and hard, like that's what the green tree community needs from people that are interested in doing locality projects, or like going for a certain look, or trying to stick with certain genes or whatever. I think in my opinion, the green tree community has done so many things better than every other community out there. We keep better records than everyone. We like name our animals and respect the names of other animals. Like like Patrick a handful of years ago was like, "Hey, I'm gonna name this snake Warpaint." I said, "No, you're not, because I already have one named that." And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like
that's literally me trying to find names for my current chondros, and I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
I got a Aru male import that's got a gnarly scar, and I'm thinking Scarface, and I'm like, nope, Bill's got a Scarface. Like,
yeah, it's like it's not a huge deal for just like the people that only have like one or maybe two, but the second that green tree breeds and produces, to be able to say the names of the parents and automatically know what pairing it was is hugely valuable. And so I think the green tree community does a lot of things really well. I don't think in recent years we have given enough effort into like really working projects as individuals. I think people that say, "Man, I want to produce a blue snake," they go out and buy neos from crazy blue pairings, and they grow up to be blue snakes. And it's like, man, I would hope that people would see what I'm doing and what a handful of others are doing and say, "Oh man, this isn't just a like buy a neo and hope you win the lottery game. It's like create what you want over time and over generations, and like put in the work to create what you want, and not just like, oh man, I hope I get lucky with what I buy, or with this first clutch. Like, man, put in the work for 3-4 clutches. You look at what Marshall is doing with the albino project, and it's, I mean, that dude has gone through the ringer to make a single albino chondro live into adulthood. Like he's still trying for it. And man, that's the kind of mentality that I want to infuse into the new keepers, is say, man, let's all pick a lane and let's work that lane separately until the end of it. Because I think that'll help push the entire hobby forward.
It's funny you say that, Mark, because I think, I've said it from the beginning, like what my focus is I don't think anybody that I know of in the community has said that their entire program is aimed at blue dorsals. I don't care what other color the snake is. I just want that cyan electric blue that you find in the yellow neonates. And I want to see if I can get that real thick and bleeding out a little bit on top of red neonates. I mean, even if they're, the animal that I got from Patrick, it's funny you talk about names. I don't think I have any issues with stepping on people's toes at names. My snakes have some pretty childish names because my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old name them all. So I have Christoph, I have Elsa, I have Sister, Waffle, Elmo. So
we're waiting for an Olaf.
wait, I'm sure one's going to be called Olaf. Yeah. But with that most recent pairing with the male that I got from Patrick being the sire is just an unbelievable example of just an awesome yellow neonate that turned into an amazing adult. It's just a green snake with just that screaming blue down the back. And I took it to, a really cool looking Biak, and I'm hoping for some really neat looking maniacs. And if I could just get that blue dorsal on there, the female has some cool yellow splotches. I hope that I can get some kind of cool tricolor out of it. But if I just get a green snake with a blue dorsal, like that's all I want. I want to stay consistent with that. And have it be less of the lottery. And maybe, when the yellow neos come out, the pattern, like Patrick said, is the fingerprint. It's just the contrast of the blue to the green.
Yeah, well, and like there used to be people that worked tricolor projects, and I mean Kim Burge, she had some unbelievable tricolor stuff that she would continually hatch out over and over, and so yeah, I feel like in some ways the green tree community has kind of adopted the ball python mentality of when you hatch out a clutch, you keep back just a couple of the best ones, and then you sell the rest to make yourself rich off green trees. And it's like anyone who's kept green trees for any amount of time is like you are never going to get rich doing this.
Yeah,
but
that's the truth.
But if you sell off the majority of your clutch, chances are you're going to regret a handful of ones that you sell, and then all of a sudden you're not keeping the best ones for yourself anymore that could have built this project that you're working on. And so a guy like Ryan Burke, who is doing the pure Arus, he's doing this Aru project, and he's keeping back so many of the babies because
Ryan Young, right?
Oh yes, yeah. What did I say?
Oh,
I always say Ryan Burke and Ryan Young. I always say the wrong name.
I'm glad you clarified that, because so Ryan Young picked up a pair of my Solaire retics so he can cross off Saputrii off his list.
Nice.
And so we traded, and I was for 2 months before we settled on the animals of trading, trying to convince him to sell some of the Maniquaris he produced over a year ago, and he just would not budge. And as like in me, as like much as I would have killed to have, some of those animals, I can appreciate it, because it's something that I've been thinking about too, because I haven't produced a clutch. That's my dream, my goal. And, if I'm ever lucky enough to do it and I get a clutch, I kind of feel the same way, at least for a while, for at least my first few clutches, of just trying to hang on to everything for like at least a year and see what they're doing. Because, I know that Bill says he loves the part about it, but man, Bill has sold some freaking screamers.
Yeah, I can tell you my most recent clutch ain't leaving. I maybe one or two, but I'm keeping, I think, every single one.
Yeah, and there's definitely a great mindset behind selling some before they change, and you know what, people end up with some great snakes. Well, hopefully they're going to share that. They're going to tell everyone where they got it from and everything, and that's great, especially for some of your projects. But man, if you're wanting to work a certain project and be the guy, like Ryan Young, he is the Aru guy. He is proving that white is inheritable in Arus.
Yeah, it just took 4 gens, but
But all you got to do is hold them all back and figure out which ones have the highest white, and then breed those back to each other and create more white, and then hold all those back and breed. And so it's not a sexy project because it takes forever. But he's the guy, and that's awesome. And so, I hope more people can see what Ryan is doing, what Marshall is doing, what I'm doing with yellows, and the handful of other people that have really like picked this certain lane within the chondro world and said, man, this is what I'm going to own. I'm going to stay laser focused on it, and I'm going to run this route. And just because I think that's going to make all of us better. Like, dude, you think about, like, name some of the guys and girls that are like the people that are renowned for great collections, and you'll also find that those are the same people that keep their neos until after they change color. Dave D, he doesn't let neos go. He waits until they go through their color change. Like John Irby, he lets some neos go, but he has so much blue that he's like, he knows what he's doing. Come on. Sock holds back a lot. He does sell some, but he holds back a lot. And those dudes have some of the greatest, craziest collections out there. And it's because they're holding back like what actually becomes the best to themselves. And that's important when you're working a project. So I do think it's a thing that the chondro community can improve upon as we go forward.
I had the pleasure of talking to Ryan Young. I want to say it was last week now. And long story short, I just recently got hooked up with a new source, and this animal was sent to me, and I'm not going to spill the beans because it's his, but he picked it up. It's something he's been searching for, and I was so excited. I'm like, hey, I think I got a snake for you. I think I'm going to complete like this pair that you need, and he ended up picking it up.
Nice.
So
Nice.
Yeah, he'll. I'm sure he'll post it, but it's I'll tell you guys about it after the episode. I'm not gonna split his business out on the internet. But it was cool to talk to him on the phone, and then I sent him pictures and stuff. He's like, yeah, that one's worth taking the risk on the sex. So
yeah, Ryan's a great guy. I got to meet him at Bill's last year. And,
he is, he really is.
That was the first time that we had actually hung out in person. So I respect the heck out of that guy. He has really done an incredible job with so many species. So we can all hope to live in the shadow of Ryan Young.
Right. You were talking about like giving new people advice and trying to build up the chondro game. When it comes to building up the chondro world, you have the Texas Chondro Instagram account. You spend a great deal of time and effort, not just posting yourself, but upholding others and other breeders that are in Texas and sharing their stuff. I mean, shoot, you shared my importer Rue pair, a week ago, and 1,800 likes, I think, and like got me like 30 new followers. And just what you're doing is phenomenal. I mean, why'd you choose to, expend and take the time and energy? It's already dog eat dog out there sometimes on social media. And you're out here just, free advertisement of Texas chondro breeders. I think it's great. Yeah.
So well, thank you for saying all that stuff. I do appreciate it. And, I learned really early on that I didn't want to have a dog eat dog world in my circle of the community. I had seen it with ball pythons. I had even seen it with carpet pythons a little bit. And I just, every person that I met that had green street pythons, I just loved talking to and like getting to know them and being their friends. And I was like, dude, these people are awesome. And they're sharing all their knowledge with me, like the history that we all share together, like with the different lineages. And man, the species is still like, we have not cracked the code on green trees. Like there's still so much to learn. And so, man, the more knowledge we can put into it, the better. And so for me, I wanted to have a collaboration rather than a competition. That was my heartbeat from the get-go. And regardless of the Instagram stuff, like I just wanted to collaborate and be friends with these people rather than try and beat them at something. That's just what I felt very early on. And then with Instagram, I got on very early. I was in the, kind of the golden age of Instagram, if there was one. And when the algorithms were still kind to us all. And I knew how to build a following. I got pretty good at social media pretty early on. And I knew I wanted to start sharing this passion of green tree pythons, but I only had like 4, maybe 5 green tree pythons at the time. And so I was like, I knew I needed to post at the time. This is it. You needed to post at least once a day, like, and just be consistent with that. And so I was like, dude, if I post once a day, like it's going to be the same 5 snakes over and over again. And that sounds awful. Like that sounds so boring. Who wants to see that? And so I reached out to all the green tree keepers in Texas that I knew. I sent them messages individually. I said, hey, like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Would you want to like submit your pictures to me so that I can like get you more followers? And I had everyone's permission. And so I just started sharing it, and it just continued to grow and grow and blew up more and more. There's been a handful of videos that have like reels and everything that have gotten over 1 million likes and views. And it's the numbers. I do like the numbers because it lets me know that I'm doing a good job. But for me, like getting to send Lucas a message and be like, hey dude, your post is killing it right now. Has it gotten you new followers? And for you to go, yeah, actually it has. Like I've got like 30 new followers. That's killer. Like that's what it's about. And so, man, if I can elevate you and get more eyes on your account, dude, then all Texas keepers, and hopefully all snake keepers, but all keepers within my community, we're all going to rise up, because all ships rise with the tide. And so that's been the heartbeat with the account is, man, I love helping the people who I love, who are keeping the snakes that I love. And man, if we do it together, we can go so much further than if we ever tried to do it alone.
Yeah, I think it's such a great mentality, especially in the snake breeding world where there's I, again, don't know too much about the chondro community just yet, but I can speak from experience with the communities that I'm part of. There's a lot of infighting, a lot of competition, one-upsmanship, and for you to take the time out of your day just to try to build up the community is huge. But I want us to jump into like husbandry and breeding. Chuck, why don't you take us into some of our husbandry questions that we have, and I want to learn a little bit about like what you do in terms of raising and husbandry and keeping and breeding and all that good stuff.
Yeah, Mark. So what are you keeping as far as hot spot, cool spot, and or what are you doing as far as are you doing night job year round? Do you have an ambient? Just kind of divulge into just the temperatures, I guess.
Yeah. So like the like basic general setup that I have, I don't keep ambient. So my house fluctuates. My wife likes it really cold at night, and she likes it, warmer during the day because she's too cold during the day. And so then it's like the house fluctuates all over the place. So my cages do have heat on them, and in general, I try and keep a hot spot of around 84 to 86 and a cool side of around 80, 81, 82. That's from the most like basic look at everything. I tend to keep my babies a little bit warmer, and I tend to keep my adults, I let my adults get a little bit colder. I'm here in Texas where Texas is a big state. Let's clarify that. I'm in North Texas where we have relatively mild winters, but it does get below freezing a handful of days. We do have snow probably 2 or 3 days a year. But for the most part, our winters are relatively mild and our summers are wicked hot. So I tend to have a -3 night drop all year round for everything. And then during the breeding season, I let my females go cooler. So I drop them down to like -8.
When you say that you have an 84, 86 hotspot, are you talking about with a temp gun?
That's a great question, and definitely a huge clarification. So, yes, when I say an 84 to 86 degree hotspot, the way I measure that is I am using a temp gun and I am shooting the snake while it is next to that hotspot. So I am measuring the surface temperature of the snake at the hottest point that it can be at. That is a very good clarification, because to have you can't just set your thermometer or your herp stat or whatever at 86 with a probe some ambiguous place in your enclosure and say, okay, it's good.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Before you get too far, what type of temperature gun are you using? What brand?
I don't know. A yellow one.
Okay.
Probably E-Tech City off of Amazon or something.
Okay.
Yeah, Chuck over here has the $1,000 infrared. He can probably see follicles built with the freaking temp gun that he has.
It is not infrared. It is thermal imaging.
That's my bad.
Yeah. Good
Man,
for you.
I saw him using one of those, and I messaged him, and I was like, "What kind of toys do you play with, man?"
Like a 0 dark 30 in my snake room is what it is.
Yeah. And I think that's an important distinction. Like, especially when you start talking about incubation and hey, where do you, what do you set your incubator at? And it's like,
right.
People, especially in the green tree world, people go crazy over like a 1/10 of a degree, thinking that
Yes,
their thermometer, their herp stat or whatever is actually at that temperature. And it's not. It is not guaranteed unless you paid crazy money for a like scientifically calibrated thermometer, mercury grade scientific calibrated thermometer
with the liquid probe, all the little green glass.
Yeah, then your whatever your herp stat, your vivarium electronics stuff, it's wrong. It is not telling you the same temperature. However, it is giving you a point to measure off of. Right. So for me, I'm like, I look at my herp stat on my incubator, or really in my cages too, and it might as well not say numbers. It might as well say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And if my snake is doing something that, if it's on the cool side the whole time, then I need to go from E, where I have it, and I need to go down a little bit, and get closer to A. So people get tripped up over the numbers, thinking that they're exact things, and the reality is it could be the exact thing, and it could also be 2 degrees off. You have no idea, and so you just have to watch your snakes. You have to know what you should be looking for. You have to be super observant. There are plenty of species of snakes out there, and reptiles in general, that you don't have to be super observant on. You can put them away. You can put them in a tub, and you don't have to stare at them and figure stuff out. Green trees are just not that species. You need to have an observant eye, and you need to pay attention to what's going on if you want to be successful keeping them. So that's a long rant that probably didn't make much sense when I started saying the alphabet, but
it does.
I mean, I get it. So like my incubator, my herp stat is set to like 89.5, but my temperatures that I'm using off of a sensor push thermometer, which to me is like the most accurate you can get without going, crazy overboard with expensive thermometers, is at 87, right? So that's a 2.5 degree difference. And if you're just going off that thermostat, you're going to do sometimes a lot more harm than you think you are good.
I've also, it is tremendously important when you have a thermostat or any sort of thermostat, that probe placement is probably one of the most important things, in my opinion, if not the most important. Probe placement is key.
Yeah. I hear people that kill their eggs in their boxes because they have that probe inside the egg box, and it's like the eggs are gonna cool, they're gonna heat up at different stages of incubation, and if your thermostat is constantly having to switch gears and change, you're having too much of a fluctuation. All good points.
And it takes too long for that temperature in the chamber to get to the eggs, where it may be, you may have hours upon hours of excessive heat that you didn't want because it's going to retain in that box. And then there's that barrier of the chamber. It just doesn't work. The eggs are going to do what they're going to do inside there. They're going to constantly change temperatures, in my opinion. And I think the worst thing you can have is your first clutch in an egg box with a Govee or a sensor push, and you're sitting there biting your nails because they're 1/2 degree hotter than what you think. I got a guy right now. I'm not going to mention names, but he sold his incubator, and he was going to maternally incubate his eggs, and his female deserted him. And he contacted me on messages, said, "Hey, I don't know what to do. I have eggs sitting in a lay box, and I have no incubator." Long story short, lack of better words, he finger effed them to hell. I mean, because he had just eggs sitting there, brought him to a local pet store that threw him in a.
I messaged that guy.
Yeah,
I was like, take him to a friend, take him to an incubator. Like, you get him out of there. Do it.
Wait, do you know the current states they're on right now? Mm-mm. So, long story short, he took him to the pet shop. They put him directly to vermiculite, just in a shoebox container, and that's it, in a clump. So long story short, I said, dude, that this pet shop doesn't understand how to incubate these if they're just incubating them in a pet shop. I said, you need to build your own incubator. He built an igloo. I drew up a design on the paper and sent it to him. He built an igloo cooler with ultratherm heat pads on the bottom. On top of those heat pads is 2 serving dishes, the Sterno tinfoil serving dishes filled with water. I made him put egg crate on top of that, made him throw a computer fan in there, and then I had him build his own egg box. I think he's on day 33 of incubation.
Dude, if these 35 things make it after the back and forth, it's going to be nuts.
They're dented, but they never recovered from the denting from the pet shop. They plumped up a little bit. He's got 13 good eggs still. They're day 33, day 35. He doesn't even know when they were laid, but they're still alive. They're pearly white. They're dented, but they're alive. And a couple of them are like, I mean, I would be so happy if they were my eggs looking on day 35 that are actually somewhat plump, like 4 or 5 of them. I think he's actually going to hatch about. He's over the 30-day hump.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's sick. Yeah, I've said it a ton of times. Like, man, good eggs want to hatch.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and that's, you can, granted, you can screw it up, 1,000 ways, but in the end, man, a good egg, it is going to fight tooth and nail in order to hatch for you, if you can give it the right parameters.
As long as you got to be 86 to 88 and give him at least, some type of ventilation with like 97 to 99% humidity.
Yeah.
And
I mean, because I incubate on vermiculite. I put my eggs in the vermiculite and I leave them there the entire time. And
now but you separate them, right?
Not always.
See, that's the thing. You have. Do you want to jump right into it, Lucas? Let's jump in, because you
want to jump into breeding. I could circle around. I wanted to ask him one enclosure question or setup question, just how he keeps his animals set up.
Ask him while we're still in the husbandry.
Let's knock that out real quick. But Mark, I guess take us through the stages of life with your animals and what you set them up in, and do you use bedding, paper? Do you suspend over water for your neos, and then getting into your adults? What size enclosures do you? What are your thoughts on how you set them up? Basic, naturalistic.
Yeah. So I'll start at the very beginning. For babies that hatch out here, so they hatch out of the egg. I give them probably 5 to 7 days in the incubator, hatch box, where they are still all together as babies. And then once I separate them out, they are going into an individual shoebox tub within a rack, over water. They have a couple perch options, and I have them over just the thinnest layer of water. It doesn't even fully cover the whole tub, but there's pockets of water all over this 6-quart tub. And I keep them like that until after their first shed. I'm changing the water pretty much every day, dumping it out, cleaning the tub, and then putting in new fresh water. The reason for that is I want to make sure that these neos are getting super hydrated and that they have a no issue first shed. I want them to get that first shed clean and clear. So after that, I put them on paper towels in that same 6-quart tub, and I am spraying them down about twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, for most days until about their second shed. Once they get past that second shed, I'm dropping the spraying down. I'm doing less and less spraying. Here in Texas, in North Texas, I'm relatively humid. I don't have to worry too much about spraying, as long as everything's hydrated. And then I'm keeping the neos in that same setup, that 6-quart tub, a couple perch options over paper towel, for about the first year to year and a half that they're with me. After that, they're going into kind of a large Cambro, not a large Cambro. It's probably like a foot long by 6 to 8 inches high by 6 to 8 inches wide Cambro, focus cube hanger. For those of you that like focus cube and use them, the hanger Cambro tub that they use is what I feel is a great grow option. And then from there, once they're in that 2.5 to 3-year-old range, they're mostly moving up into their adult enclosures. For males, I try and do 18 by 18 cube as a minimum. A lot of my males are in 24 by 24 cubes. And then females, I have in like 30-inch by 18 to 20-inch high, 18 to 20-inch deep enclosures. So a little more length for them to really stretch out. And then I personally don't like being armpit deep cleaning a cage with a green tree zoning in on my hand below it.
Man,
I like a little bit shallower cage.
That's the fun.
I got my 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 importer roos are not as sweet as I thought that most people say a roos are, and they're at a place where like I have to get on a stool to like get up there, and let me tell you, putting that female back up on a stool, she's got access to my face, man. She's probably, I've smelt her breath way too many times.
By the way, Mark, I didn't mean to. When I say that they were just keeping it on vermiculite at the pet store, it was on vermiculite in a clump, and it was an 1851 Sterilite tote with no gasket on it, and it was in a dry chambered incubator.
Yeah.
And there was mold growing on the lid of the container that they sent him home with. Like it was just
like I said, these freaking,
it was a mess.
When these animals hatch, man, it's going to be insane.
I told him I think that if he does get some to hatch out, I think that there's a good chance that there's going to be quite a few deformities.
Yeah, temperature. I mean, with fluctuations, but yeah. And let me ask you real quick.
He doesn't know what happened for the first 7 days with that at pet store.
Mark, real quick before we get into breeding, substrate, paper towel, diaper pads.
Yeah, so I use paper substrate. It's a corrugated crate paper that
Uline stuff.
Yeah, that I get from Uline, and I cut it to size and fit it in the cage, and it's great. That's what I use for the adult cages. The adult and the grow outs is that Uline
awesome
corrugated craft paper. I feel like it does pretty well. I haven't gotten to the puppy pads just because I feel like I can get the crate paper for a little bit cheaper price, and it does just as good. And so I know Bill uses the puppy pads. I know a lot of people use the puppy pads and have a great just result from them. But for me, the paper does just fine. The great thing about chondros is that they're easily the lowest maintenance snake you'll ever keep.
They're so easy, man.
Lucas, especially you coming from retics. I mean,
they piss gallons like 4 times a week, dude.
Yeah,
that's why I got away from the paper. I could not, man.
Cleaner than a green tree. Like it is, we act like green tree keepers are upper echelon and like so prim and proper, and no, it's because the snakes we keep, they don't like being dirty. Like they poop. Like a female poops once a month, maybe. A male poops.
It's phenomenal.
It's the easiest snake you'll ever clean up after, ever. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different substrates. I personally don't keep green trees over like a actual substrate with cocoa chip or cocoa bark or eco earth or any of that stuff. I know people that have and do it okay. For me, I just don't see the need in it. I think, maybe it holds humidity well, but it's like, dude, I keep other snakes that need to be over some type of soil, dirt substrate just in order to soak up, their constant leaking. But green trees are just not that snake. So just my two.
Christ, my quarantine and also David Brahms are, maybe it is David Brahms, but I know my quarantine, I don't even have substrate. I just have
Yeah.
a water bowl and a storage tube on PVC perches and Amazon command hooks.
What do you use in your non-quarantine cages, Chuck?
They're puppy pads, but they're like the carbon ones, and that's only because of the display enclosures down here. It's like a cool looking, like a gray rather than that white and baby blue that wouldn't like match it. It just looks prettier.
It sounds like something with a thermal gun would have.
I'm night vision goggles.
Oh man. Yeah, I will say I went directly to the cocoa chip. And so far no issues at all. You know, and you know, the spot cleaning goes well in just about every shed. It gets a full clean out. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, just, and to be honest, it's more for a visual aesthetic thing. I got away from the paper with the retics a long time ago, and I didn't want to get back into it. Because I knew I'd probably get a little lazy one day and start putting paper back in the retic enclosures, and I'm not dealing with that mess again. So no paper in my garage.
Yeah.
I went with the modern simplistic look with the with the carbon puppy pads, but I have like the Pyrex dishes I copied off of Joey the Chondro Kid and Socrates.
Yeah, I do have one live plant in my adults as well too.
Well, these are all fake. All my plants are fake.
Yeah, I have one line, and believe it or not, you know, I can't get any one of my plants to, you know, I kill everything, but the ones that are in my stake enclosures look beautiful, so I'll take it.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I literally only spray them like once a week, but it is what it is.
Hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. All right, Chuck, I'm gonna let you take it away with the breeding section because I'm gonna be taking good notes here.
All right. Excuse me. So, Mark, just kind of walk me through, because you do have a season. I do not. So, I run night job year round, and I keep like Sock does, and also Patrick. I have animals now breeding year round. So you do have a season. So can you walk me through when you your females when you say, all right, it's time. Can you walk through feeding, temperature adjustments, lighting adjustments, any of that? If it's cycling, if it's different prey items, if it's more frequent, whatever.
Yeah, so I do run a season, mostly for my own convenience, not necessarily because I think chondros have to be seasonal. Because Chuck, like you said, chondros have been bred, hatched, eggs laid every month of the year. There is no like specific season that they need to stick to. For me, it works really well for my job, my availability, my free time to establish NEOS. A season works really well for me, so that's why I do it. And for me, so I do all the cycling that I can. I do food cycling, I do temperature cycling, I do light cycling, and I do introductions. Oh, did I say food cycling? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do as many different cycles as I can, because I'm hoping that at least some of that will help, you know, push the female into
follicular growth.
Just going the distance. So it's like, man, if you have all the tools in your tool belt, hopefully one of them is going to fit, you know, the screw that you need to tighten. So for me, the way that I do food cycling, I break everything into 2-month increments. And the reason I did 2-month increments is because most things, I looked at a chondro, like a reproductive chondros cycle, and I said, man, everything in there takes about 2 months, right? So, like locking to ovulation takes about 2 months. Ovulation to egg deposition takes about 2 months. Egg laying to eggs hatching takes about 2 months. So I said, man,
hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. When your female has that massive swollen ovulation, it's about 2. Well, yeah, never mind. I'm thinking after the shed.
5.5 weeks.
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
about 50, anywhere from 50 to 60 days.
yeah, no, I mean that sounds about. I was thinking after that shed. For me, at least with the retake, shed is 35 days, but from the time they ovulate, it's typically about 2 to 3 weeks until they shed. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what are you seeing from ovulation to egg deposition, Mark? Because mine have been a little bit longer. I'm right around like the late 40s.
Ovulation, I can pull it up right now.
High 40s, excuse me, high 40s.
For those that don't know and didn't catch Mark on the Chondro bar room, he writes down every water change, every poop, every shed, every fart.
Yeah, and I have it all. I have it all cataloged.
Dude, I need to get into that for my chondros. I got lazy with the retakes because I know them, but I need to get back into good habits.
And the only reason I do it is because of times like this when I can look back and it teaches me something. You know, like I don't just do it because I'm like some like obsessive compulsive anal retentive person. Like I do it because I'm like, man, what is this going to teach me? So ovulation to deposition, I am mostly in the high 40s to low 50s. I do have some outliers in like I have 57 days from
Wow.
ovulation to deposition. And it was 22 eggs and no slugs. So
Wow.
So, you know, it's like, wow, that's a lot, but maybe
the 2 month
from
cycle checks out.
Deposition, she just had a lot more eggs to cook. So the lowest I've had, let's see, is 42 days ovulation to deposition. The longest I've had was 57. The average is right around like 48 to 50 ovulation to deposition. So going backing.
Sorry, yeah, we got way ahead.
So I looked at the chondro reproductive cycle and said, man, most things happen in about 2 months. So what I'm going to do is during the summer, I'm going to fast my females for 2 months. It works. Again, it works with my lifestyle. I travel during the summer. I'm gone. The less I have to feed and do maintenance during the summer, the better for me personally. So I don't feed for 2 months of the summer.
Wow.
Then for about 2 months in the fall, I feed about weekly for my females. Those are small meals. I'm going down about 2 prey sizes. So for a female that has weaned rats, I'm giving her a large mouse or maybe even a medium mouse every week for about those 2 months. So during that 4-month span, 2 of it she's not eating at all. 2 of it she's eating twice as much as she normally would. But if you average it out, she's eating the same amount if I kept on that like every other week schedule, basically.
Are you feeding them while they're in shed during that time?
Yeah, if they'll take it. I'm not pushing them. I'm like I think there's an important distinction that I'm not power feeding them. I'm not like calories at all cost. Like get bigger. What I'm trying to do is simulate a fasting season and a season of plenty.
Yep.
And so, and it's not, when I do feed, I'm not feeding like every week. I'm not a every Sunday feeder. I'm like anywhere from 7 to 12 days. Like within that realm, I'm going to give them a small meal. And so I do that for 2 months. And then towards the end of that, I'm throwing in the male and then once that male goes in, I'm back to feeding my females about every 14 to 20 days. And I'll do that until she refuses. So that's how I food cycle them. Light cycling naturally. So I have my lights to turn on with sunlight or sunrise and sunset here in Dallas, and so during the winter their days are getting shorter. During the summer the days are longer, so the lights just cycle automatically. The temperature, I drop my females for that 2-month period when I am feeding them heavily. I am dropping them about a degree and a half a week until I get to a -7, -8 degree night drop. I'm leaving their daytime temps the same, but I'm getting down to about a -7 or -8 night drop from what that daytime temp is. And like I said, I normally keep them at about a -3 night drop all the time. So I'm only dropping about 5 degrees from what their normal night drop is. And then from there, it's just recording locks and waiting for once a female goes off food, I know I'm getting close. So I leave the male in while she's off food. As long as they are exhibiting breeding behavior, I will keep that male in. Then there will usually become a point when the male and the female are on opposite sides of the cages for a couple nights in a row. And typically, the male will start to go into shed. I've seen it over and over again. And what happens in my collection, and I've seen it happen in other people's collections, it's not a sure thing. I'm not like, I don't pretend that this is, it needs to be in the Chondro Bible or anything. But what happens in my collection is when the male and female stop breeding, the male will typically go into shed. And so I separate them because he's completely inactive. He's not doing anything while he's going into shed. And then he will shed his skin. I will find like a freshly shed skin from the male within about 2 or 3 days of the female ovulating.
That's nuts.
I have no idea why it happens. I don't have any explanation for it. But I have seen it happen time again, where when I see the breeding slow down and a male go in, like start a shed cycle, I'm like, here we go. He got the job done. Here it comes. And sure enough, that the male, from the time he goes into blue, it's probably like the second you start seeing him go into shed, it's probably 10 days until he actually sheds out. And so I pull him out and I just wait and I watch that female blow up and blow up and blow up. And then he will shed on or near the day that she ovulates. And when a chondro ovulates, it's unmistakable. You can't miss it. Like if you look at your snakes every day, she looks like she's swallowed. There's no guessing.
And this is for me. So, my female took a meal very, very reluctantly. She's a voracious feeder. She took a meal very reluctantly after being locked up at least a dozen times. After she took that meal, she refused for like a week straight, 2 other offerings. And then I offered another one and she bit it and let go twice, and then very reluctantly took it again. But they are still together and they are still breeding.
Okay, so here's something that I have noticed. I'm not saying this is chondro law. Take it or leave it. I've had females do that same thing and they didn't end up going. So what I started doing is when a female refuses, I just stop offering. Because I don't want to push her to reabsorb, to say, oh man,
to choose food over breeding.
Yeah, I should keep doing this. So I stop when she has a reluctant feed. I'll like, obviously, if she takes it, I'm not gonna like pry it out of her mouth. But if she refuses a meal, I say, you're not getting another meal until you're like wanting a meal, until you're actively hunting, until you have proven to me that you are not doing anything. Because I had females that I kept offering meals to see like, okay, well, are you going to take it this week? Or and I had some take it, and then it felt like they were reabsorbing, or they were kind of coming off cycle. But also I looked at myself and I was like, why am I trying to feed this snake? Like if anything, I don't want it to take a meal. So why am I offering it a meal? Like, stop offering. Right. So again, it's complete conjecture. I have no idea if it actually like pushes them away from ovulating or anything. I'm not a biologist. I don't know how that works, but I stopped offering meals because I was like, I don't want them to eat. If they're refusing meals and I don't want them to eat, that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. So, they're still cuddled. We'll see. I guess we'll see what happens. I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah. I mean, she either will or she won't. And that's great. Either way.
You touched a little bit on incubation medium earlier. You choose vermiculite. I'm curious because there's such little information out there because I've been looking for it, and you don't find it a lot. Do you use a lay box, and if so, what substrate are you using in the lay box?
Yeah, so I have used a lay box in the past, and when I used one, I have either done the Gary Shavino method of pulling all the highest perches, and I typically leave a low perch just because I feel like I'm a bit insensitive if I don't. I don't know. It's just a personal thing. But then I cover the cage floor with sphagnum moss, and I have a hide, just a upside down half pipe of a cork round or a planter or something in there for her to go under and feel secure. So I've done that in the past. This past year in 2023, I started taking some of my like smaller sized females that were laying, and I started putting them in a hatchling rack when I knew that they were about a week away from laying. I put them in a hatchling rack with either sphagnum moss or with just kind of I don't even want to call it damp because it wasn't damp. It's like a misted towel or a misted t-shirt or something. And I put that in a 6-quart hatchling rack with of gravid female. And that worked great. It was awesome because I knew they weren't going anywhere. The temps are great. They settle down pretty quick, and they just curl up and you wait for them to lay. And that was pretty awesome. So I do think I'm going to be doing more of that. Now, granted, there are several females here that will not fit in a 6-quart hatchling rack. And so, for them, I'll either do the lay box method or a all substrate on the bottom, sphagnum moss on the bottom method, or maybe put them in a bigger tub. I don't know, but I I was really impressed by the simplicity and the effectiveness of the hatchling rack. If a female can fit in it, it makes her feel super secure. It keeps constant heat, and when she lays, like you don't even have to just like pull up the towel or like the hide when she lays. You can just open the rack and look underneath and see if there's eggs, and if there's not, you just close it. And so it was really a easy way to check on the female without disturbing her. And when she has laid, pull it out, and you just have a tub of eggs that you got to get her off of. So it works really well.
Interesting. I know a lot of people do this, and I've done it once before with my wild caught Kalatoa. She was pacing a bunch when she was gravid, wouldn't settle down, didn't take to a lay box. So I put her in one of my large ARS racks.
Yeah.
And no pushing, no pacing, no nothing. Settled down. She laid like 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Settles down within the first like 2 or 3 days of being in there. And then, they're done. And I don't put any water in there. It's like, man, they can handle it. Like, it's okay. Your female should be adequately hydrated before any of this. if she's going to have good fertile eggs, she's got enough water in her to go without water for a week. Yeah, and they tend to do great. I'm totally like John Irby said that he's okay being a little mean to his females if it means getting like good eggs and a healthy female after, and that's an approach that I have adapted as well and said, man, it's working great.
So she lays the eggs and they hatch. Take us through your post-hatch process. When do you start feeding trials, all that good stuff?
Well, first let's talk about incubation, because she lays the eggs and they don't always hatch. If you
Touché.
don't, well, so for me, I had bad luck incubating over water, doing the no substrate method. It just didn't work for me. I didn't have the hatch rates that I felt like were acceptable for my setup. Other people were knocking it out of the park with it. Bill was knocking it out of the park with it. I used the same tubs. I did everything the same as what Bill was advising me to do. And I was having like a 20 to 30% hatch rate on my clutches. And I was like, this is garbage. Like, this is just unacceptable. And so I went back to like old school, like let's do what's worked for millennia, and not be jaded by the new age keeper that feels pride in keeping their eggs over water. And I just said, man, I'm gonna suck up my pride and I'm gonna go back to what I know like has worked for a long time, and I'm just putting them on vermiculite. So I put my eggs, if I can separate them easily enough, I'll separate them out and I'll put them, I'll bury that bottom third of them in vermiculite. The vermiculite is mixed a 1-to-1 ratio by weight with water. So 100 grams of vermiculite with 100 grams of water.
Do you know if perlite? So I've used perlite forever. I know that's a big medium that other species use. Do people have the same success with perlite, or is it like vermiculite that's really recommended for chondro eggs?
No, yeah, I have talked to people that have used perlite and had great success. I actually think perlite might be I don't know if it's a better option, but I can see benefits to it because there is likely more airflow through the granules because they are more coarse granules. Where vermiculite, it's almost a powder. It's very sand feeling, where it's pretty fine. And so to have perlite or even hatcherite, which is basically just pre-mixed perlite, with a little bit more airflow through the granules, I think could be beneficial. But I just haven't explored it yet. I had bought a big bag of vermiculite and I'm sticking with it. So
If it's working, go with it, man.
yeah. So I put my eggs directly on vermiculite, and then I put them in a tub with vermiculite, and then I put that tub in a larger tub that is got a water basin at the bottom of it. So essentially I have eggs on vermiculite that are suspended over water in a tub. My tubs don't have gaskets. My tubs are not airtight. Here's another thing John Irby said at one point is that generally living things do pretty well with air. And so I said, you know what? He's right. Why are we trying to suck all the air out? Like, eggs breathe. We should probably give them air. So I have it's like a kind of a Sterilite type tub that it just has a lid that snaps on it. It's not airtight, but it allows a little air through it, but it's definitely not like sealing the entire thing. And since I changed to that method, I've had great success hatching eggs and having good hatch rates, and it's been great. Now, once the eggs get down towards that like final 2 or 3 days before they hatch, I will move them off of vermiculite, especially even with this last clutch. I saw the pip. I saw the first head sticking out, and I said, okay, it's time to move the eggs off of the vermiculite and into a light diffuser tray that's just like over damp paper towels or over a little bit of water. And the reason I do that is only because I don't want the vermiculite like getting all over the NEOS faces when they're like mucking around and getting out of the egg and everything. It's just a mess. So I just take them off of that and move the eggs into a hatching tray. So that's what I do. And then getting them separated and established and all that stuff. Then the fun really starts.
Yeah, there you go. I was about to ask you. Now back to the original question, which thank you for kind of putting that little, let's talk about incubation real quick. I remembered earlier we were talking about vermiculite and I was like, incubation, check.
Check.
No. But yeah, so they pip out of the egg and they are fully out of the egg. Are you separating them right away? Are you, and then, once they have that first shed, I know you're talking about how you kind of put them over just a little bit of water. You want that hydration for that first shed. How quickly after are you offering that first meal?
Yeah. So when they hatch out, I wait for all of the babies to hatch in that hatching tub that I put in. I put in a perching option. I have stuff like I want all of them to get out of the egg and perch up inside the incubator. And I typically leave them in there to just acclimate to the world. You're out of your egg. You've been in an egg for 2 months. Now you're in the world. Let's just leave you alone for a couple days. I usually leave them in the incubator for, 5 to 7 days where they're just hanging out, like waiting for everyone to hatch out. Everything's good. And then we're about 5 to 7 days of acclimating before I take them out to start separating them. So then I separate them out into those individual hatchling tubs, and I wait for all of my hatchlings to have their first shed before I start feeding trials. Some of them shed, relatively quick within the first 2 weeks of being out of the egg. Some of them are more like 3 weeks. So I try and wait for all of my hatchlings to have their first shed before I start offering feeding trials. Now, there's some hatchlings that will skip their first shed, or at least what their siblings are calling their first shed. I tend to try and ignore that in the group, but the ones that are going to shed, I wait for all of them to shed before I start offering. Then when I do offer, I'm using chick down right out of the gate. I'm using hot small pinkies from Cold Blooded Cafe. Shameless plug. And I'm offering it frozen thawed. I'm doing erratic motions. I'm tapping them on the neck. I'm getting them to elicit that strike response. And typically it works pretty well. There are a handful that will hold out, that will run, that will duck their heads. And then you have to get a little bit more creative with either feeding pinky heads, feeding mouse legs, feeding mouse tails, rat tails, using chicken gizzards, different scenting options, doing some assist feeding just to like get some meals in them and trying to like making sure that they're gonna make it. But even the like most stubborn, like would rather die than eat feeders, I have seen them like the switch flips and they eventually become just as ravenous, just as aggressive, just as crazy as the majority of their clutch mates. Sometimes it takes a month, 2 months to have that kick in. Sometimes it takes a year, 18 months to kick in, but eventually they will kick in.
That sounds beyond stressful. I can't wait.
I just had one turn on after 17 months of age.
Jeez,
yeah.
You guys are.
It is a
rough.
Absolute beating.
It sucks.
I mean,
but,
I go ahead.
Yeah, but it's also awesome. Like,
right.
So I like you said, Lucas, I keep records on everything. And if you or anyone else ever buys a Neo from me, when you buy that Neo, you get a feeding card with every single event of that Neo's life. I don't record all the poops for Neos because it happens like daily when they're little, but every shed, every meal, everything goes into that feeding card. And I've had customers say, like, when they get that baby from me, they go, hold on, like, does PH, does that mean pinky head? When you wrote leg here, does that mean you fed it a mouse leg? I'm like, yeah, that's like, look at all that went into this snake arriving at your house and eating for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why you paid what you paid for it. And it's why not everybody's producing green trees. It's why they are like, they're a little bit harder to breed and harder to keep. And like, there is a bigger barrier on this species, particularly in the establishing of their babies. It's really, really cool. I think it's one of the cooler parts of green trees is the struggle that we have to go through in order to like raise them up, because
it weeds out the people who aren't serious.
Yeah. And it's like, man, if it was easy, then it wouldn't be that cool. Like,
right.
That's why there's only 58 of them available in Morph Market, not 50,000.
Yeah. You know what's not cool? Walking down the street. Like, you know why? Because everyone does it. Like, we can all just walk down. You know what's really cool is, I don't know, like kick flipping a skateboard down the street. Like, that's freaking cool, and that's unanimously really freaking cool, because not everybody can do it. Like, it's hard to learn how to kickflip, but dude, if you put in the time, the effort, like, the reward pays off, and you're like, man, like, establishing green tree pythons is a beating. And sometimes it's really easy. And I had a clutch last year that it was the easiest clutch I've ever had. Every single baby ate first try, the second try unscented, and they were off to the races.
You had so much free time. What you do?
I had never had a clutch like that. It was unbelievable. I was,
oh man,
just holding my hands in the air, saying, "Dude, I'm the greatest chondro breeder of all time."
I will say that it's been a switch for me. I've had to switch the mentality. Retics are known for that insane food response, and now that I have chondros, it's no different. But with retics, it's not normal for a hatchling retic to go 3 months without eating. My philosophy with retics, especially because of me doing the locality thing, and there's not a lot of blood in the pool. And so, my whole philosophy has always been if you don't eat, you die, right? And that's just because retics, they're not supposed to not eat.
Yeah.
And at first I was thinking do I apply that philosophy with chondros? And then I started realizing, I was like, no, these animals are not getting hot pink fuzzies in the wild. They're not getting chick down. They're eating things that we just simply cannot offer them all the time without risking parasites or things like that when you start getting into the geckos and things that they might be eating in the wild. And so, I will say, as hard as it's probably going to be, it's something that I look probably the most forward to in anything else right now in reptiles. Is just sitting there at 2 a.m. doing this one and jabbing it. And
yeah, so Steven Saltzman was recently on another podcast, on MJ's podcast, talking about his experience with green trees, and he said something that I've been in this twice as long, 3 times as long as Steven Saltzman, and when he said this, I was like, oh, he just hit the nail on the head. That was the most brilliant, most unbelievable thing that a chondro keeper could say. And he said that, man, when he produced green trees, he didn't want to take an easy route. He wanted to earn it. And I was like, dude, there is no species that will make you earn it more than green trees.
Yep.
And so that was just really cool to me, where I was like, yes, if you want something, if you just want to, hatch snakes and have a table full of hatchlings at a show somewhere, or, have a little bit of income and, bring life into the world, green trees are probably not the species for you. But man, if you want to be completely awestruck by a species that is so beautiful, so amazing, so bold and confident to perch out in the open, a wonderful display, easy to clean, easy to keep when you have it set up right, and is going to make you earn every single mile of the road that you're going to go down in breeding and establishing, then man, green trees are it. They
Yep.
are so fun and so challenging at the same time.
Yeah, I see them just like me sitting at the, leg of my bed, questioning my faith. Why is this happening? But I think that's such a true statement and a powerful statement, is they make you earn it. Because there are many species out there where, you can get Dumb and Dumber and you can get them to buy some snakes and put them together and produce babies, and, they'll sell, and, or there's just snakes that are very, prolific in breeding and establishing and just, I think it's definitely something that, at least today, any new chondro aspiring breeder has to have a sense of awareness by now that they're setting themselves up for a challenge, and more than likely up for failure many, many times.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of species that you can breed on accident.
Yeah.
Like, or that you would see a kid like breed and produce and go, oh yeah, my my son Jimmy just hatched out his first clutch of crested geckos or ball pythons or whatever, and that's just not going to be the reality with green trees for the large majority. And that's what's cool about it is, man, you do have to put in work. You do have to do your research. You do have to take your licks, and like, you do have to go through heartbreak, and you do, like, they are going to make you earn it. And that's what makes it super cool.
Yeah, think about the key. The key has been kept since not as all the breeders since 1976, with some international breeders on it. But as far as personal, like just private breeders and even facilities with the Smithsonian, the Philly Zoo, Tulsa Zoo, there's less than 220 people names on that list since 1976 that have successfully reproduced and established babies. Now, are there some missing? Obviously, yes. But I mean, still.
No, I mean, that's an insane number, man. You have 276 retic breeders a year producing 5 clutches each.
Yeah. I mean, so last year in Texas, Texas and Florida are the two most prolific green tree states, like in regards to the amount of babies produced and into the market.
That was very non-Texas of you to mention Florida.
Yeah, it hurt a little bit. I didn't want to leave Florida out, but so this past year, so Texas and Florida, we have this little rivalry of who can establish the most babies each year. And in Texas, the largest state with probably the most chondro breeders, where we have a ton of people trying to produce green trees, we produced just short of 300 babies last year.
That's insane.
I think it was like 275 babies last year.
Man.
So, but that's for all of the US. Like that's including our own holdbacks. That's including ones that are, that last a year and then die and have something go wrong or whatever. Like 275 babies seems like a lot, but then when you're like, dude, for the amount of people in the US that are getting into herpetoculture and finding out about green tree pythons and wanting a green tree of their own, it's a drop in the bucket. And so, the two biggest states in the nation can't produce more than 300 of these snakes. And it just puts it into perspective of, man, there's probably, I would guess there's less than 1,200, maybe even 1,000 green trees being produced in the US every year.
Yeah. I feel like if you're new listening to this into the chondro world and you were just discouraged by that, you probably, like, I feel like the right thing to feel is like fired up after hearing that.
Yeah.
Like just that motivation, just like, just to contribute to those tiny numbers. But, Mark, man, we got a couple wrap up questions that we want to talk to you about. And, but, even before we do that, I just, again, always thank you for coming on. These two wrap up questions, they're probably a little deeper, so still going to take some time, but just wanted to throw an early shout out and say thank you for hanging out with us for so long.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
Well, man, I like many chondro keepers, man, I love talking about green trees. I love talking with other people who are as fired up about the species as I am. And man, you guys are, no exception to that. So I'm always excited to talk snakes, and man, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be a guest on your show, and especially to be in this first episode, man. It's only going to go better from here. So
We thought we'd fire up the crowd and get a yellow Neo guy as our first guest.
What do you want? You want me to go first, Lucas?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, Mark. My question is, where do you see the future of the green tree python community? Where do you see the species, whether it's growing, whether it's going out of style? What do you see in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I do think looking back over the last 3 to 5 years, it's easy to see more and more people having success with keeping, with breeding, with establishing, um, and so, man, in that sense, I'm so excited for the chondro world to continue to grow. I think there's better technologies coming out. I think there's more information. I think people are sharing it. I think there's even like really talented people from other sectors of the hobby that are coming into green trees and finding out that they're not this like super advanced upper echelon only snake that can't be kept well. There's a ton of ball python keepers that are getting into green trees. I think that's awesome. And so on one end, man, I think the future of green tree keeping is just going to continue to grow and expand, and more people are going to fall in love with this species, because once you get one, it's a no-brainer. Like you can't help falling in love with it. There are so few people that I've ever talked to that said, you know what, I gave green trees a try and I'm just not into it. Like, it's just, those are the minority of people. And so, I'm excited for more and more people to fall in love with this species that I love and that I know you guys are super passionate about. In regards to like the community and the projects and everything, I'll just reiterate, man, the thing that I want to see happen in the green tree world in the next 5 years is for people to pick something that they're passionate about within the green tree world and own it and say, man, I like, everyone and their mom wants a like neon blue snake. I get it. They're gorgeous. They're beautiful. Like, you can't see one and not think it's jaw dropping. But man, there's so many other things that I think would be beneficial for people to own as a project and run with it. Off the top of my head, all the locality projects, I think those are all super important. High yellow projects, there's so few people doing high yellow right now. Even like some of the lines that are kind of like falling by the wayside, OS high yellow, lemon tree, insanity line. There's so many things that I think could really benefit from having someone say, I'm going to take one or two projects and just own it. And really, like, that's going to be my thing. And play it out for generations and see how it goes. I think that's really going to help the chondro hobby continue to just progress. And we're going to see chondros that, now looking forward, we would never imagine the chondros that we're going to be able to produce in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. I'm really happy you mentioned the locality thing, because I was going to, insert that statement there as well. I think the more we get into the designer stuff, the more the locality starts to kind of fade to the background. And there's people that buy them, right? But they're typically using them for the designer stuff.
Yeah. Or they buy one as like their very first intro, and then they say, okay, well now, like, I'm just going to do designers after that. And it's like, man, there's so many cool localities that I mean, there's so many right now that have just kind of been lost to the hobby. Like you don't see Maruki,
You'll see a lot of Kofiau.
Chondros hardly at all. You don't see hardly any Kofiaus. There's only a handful of people working with Kofiau, and that's
Wamina's not even almost. It's not really existent anymore.
Yeah, and so that, man, there's so many cool localities out there that just need someone who says, man, I like this locality, and I'm not going to fold on that, and so I'm just going to do that locality like that. I'm going to be that.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. Like I hope there's people that do it, because the reality is that a handful of people can't carry every project. Like you just can't. And so, man, we really need everyone to own their own project and say, man, this is what I'm going to work. This is the lane I'm going to stay in, and I'm going to run this thing until I can't anymore. And that's going to push everything so much further.
Yeah. Now for me, Mark, last question for you before we get into where people can find you and purchase some of your animals. What is the message about green tree pythons you want people to take away from after listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's like if I was to go back and tell young Mark like advice, I would say, man, like don't be dissuaded by the rumors or the myths about green trees and how they're all super aggressive. They're too hard to keep. You have to have X amount of years of keeping other snakes under your belt. They're only for the advanced keeper. Like that stuff is just not true. The very first snakes that I produced were green tree pythons. The very first species out of the gate. And there's a ton of people that are in that same category. So I think my message that I would want people to know about green trees is that they can be a great first snake if you are the right person to keep them. So I think in a lot of ways, we as keepers, we look at species as something to conquer. And we say, we have this hierarchy of being a keeper where we say, okay, well, I start with corn snakes, and then I graduate to ball pythons, and then I get a little bit bigger, and then I go into the and then I finally reach, expert keeper level. And I just don't see that as reality. The way I would hope that we would look at something is more to say, man, I am this type of person who can be successful with this type of animal. So the people that I see being successful with green tree pythons are people who pay close attention to detail, who like learning and doing research, who are highly observant and take, like, being a student of the serpent, like letting everything about the snake tell you what it's doing, and like taking cues from it. The people who are not going to be successful with green tree pythons, and this isn't to say that they are less than, it's just saying if you know yourself, you might not be successful with them, is people who don't pay attention to detail, who like the set it and forget it, who want the like 1 + 1 = 2 mentality. That's great. That just might mean that a green tree python is not for you. I should not keep a German Malinois, like a police dog, because that's not the dog for me. Like, I know myself, and I'm not going to walk that dog every day. I'm not going to teach that dog to climb trees and tug ropes out of the sky. It needs that, so I'm not going to do it. But like I'm not going to say, but I just really like the look of a Brittany Spaniel, and and so I'm going to get this dog who has a high energy and all these needs that I know I'm not going to meet as a person, and subject it to my lifestyle when that's not the dog that I should get. And that's the same thing with snakes. Those dogs aren't necessarily like more advanced than others. It's that they are designed for certain lifestyles of people who are designed to care for dogs in a certain way. And snakes are so different in my mind. So, that's kind of the message that I would take to the reptile world is, before you start thinking about the hierarchy of advanced keeping in which species you're looking at, look at yourself and say, man, who am I as a keeper, and what species could fit well with the lifestyle, with the tendencies, with the characteristics that I am as a person. And man, you're going to be so much more successful, instead of just bouncing from species to species, trying to figure out why isn't this working for me?
Sure.
So that's my rant.
Yeah, I think it's a great message. Even for myself, I was very reluctant. This has been my favorite species since, I was a kid, and I was scared to get into it. And literally it took me, 15 years in the making for me to finally get my first. And now that I have it and realize how easy it is, I'm like, man, why the heck did I wait so long? But I think that's a great message. Mark, again, thank you so much for coming on. If you guys are trying to get a hold of Mark, you guys want to find him on social media, txchondros on Instagram, texaschondros.com is his beautiful website that he posts all of his pairings for the year, has amazing pictures of his animals. He also has an amazing Patreon, again, with, is that TX or Texas Chondros?
Yeah, I think it's txchondros.
Yeah, so I'm a member of his Patreon. There's people on there posting pictures of their upcoming pairings, sharing babies, asking questions, showing off localities. It's a great community to join. Mark, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it, man. I mean, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I'm fairly active on social media. If you can't find me, it's probably more about your ability to do social media than it is.
I thought it was going to be because you're hiding from them, but
no. If you message Texas Chondros, it's going to be me responding to you. So yeah, and yeah, thanks for having me on. I mean, it's like I said, it's always a pleasure to come talk snakes, and I'm glad that I get to do it with you guys. So yeah.
Absolutely, man. We're going to kick you out to the back while we wrap up. But again, enjoy your evening. Thanks so much for hanging out this late, man.
Thanks, Mark. It's good seeing you, buddy. Good talking to you.
Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Yep. Take care.
All right, Chuck, that's a wrap for episode 1, man.
That was a good one. I liked it. I love Mark.
Me too. Me too. Guys, if you are listening to this for the first time, on like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or iHeart, radio, don't forget we are part of the Reptile Lounge podcast network, and you can find that page on YouTube. That'll also be joined with the Retake Lounge as well. If you guys have any suggestions, recommendations on topics that you want us to cover, we got a list full of them. We have awesome guests coming up. Chuck's got all the hookups with all the great people in the industry. I could not be more excited to talk to some people, but Chuck, you got anything before we sign out?
No. It's a good episode. Good first episode. Absolutely.
Many more to come. Have a good evening or a good morning whenever you're listening to this, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Chondro Lounge.
Y'all take care.